Hi, and welcome to this week's Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is Alice Dartnell, and Alice is back on the podcast. She's been a podcast guest already back in November 2022, talking about time management and energy management. She then came back on in March 23, talking about habits. I want to get Alice back on right now because with the first part of the year, the podcast so far this year being focused on habits, accountability, and I wanted to get her on it. She's got an event out that's coming up today. If you're listening to the podcast on the 27th of March when it's released, she's got an event you can register for, which I've tagged in the notes, about accountability. She's also got a session coming up in May as well that you can register for as well. But I just wanted to get her take, rather than me again going on a solo podcast about accountability and habits. I just want to get her take on it. This is what she does day in, day out. She's got a different aspect a little bit with it, with regards to habits and routine and how restrictive they are, but it's good to get her take on it. Before we do that, though, as always, here's Lee Rowland with this week's Mortgage Broker Bulletin.
Thank you, Craig, and welcome to the 8th edition of the Mortgage Broker Bulletin. I'm absolutely getting drenched. I'm outside and it is raining quite heavily. But anyway, let's get on to the bulletin. I had a couple of things to talk about this week. Firstly was that inflation has come down. Hopefully we'll see some consistency going forward now with some confidence in the market. Although last week again it was unpredictable. A couple of lenders putting their rates up, criteria changes. This week's bulletin is a bit of a moan, never really moaned before, about underwriting. Now the consistency of underwriting is just absolutely bonkers. Now you might turn around and say, Lee, you want to package your cases better? Yeah, I make mistakes the same as everybody else. But when one week you package your case exactly the same as the next week and it comes back with 8 different questions compared to the week before, you've got to wonder whether it's the underwriter or you. So I suppose this is a little bit about the underwriters, but also when we're talking to the brokers, just take your time on packaging your cases so they don't come back and you have question after question, which sometimes you're repeating yourself. Sometimes you've got to make them aware you've already supplied that bit of information because it is costing you time and money. Now, maybe I'm talking about myself a little bit more than the underwriters, but I think we all know where we're getting at. Package the cases correctly and hope you get a cracking underwriter and get these cases through. On Cases Empowered this week, 19 minutes from application to offer. You can't go wrong, can you? I'd give them a try for vanilla type of cases. Onwards, upwards and forwards. I'm going to get out of the rain and I'll speak to you next week.
Thanks for that, Lee. Thanks for another great episode on the Mortgage Broker Bulletin this week. So now, as I said, Alice Dartnell is this week's guest. So let's just get Alice onto the podcast. So welcome back onto the podcast. Alice, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be back on this podcast, actually. So thank you so much for inviting me back.
No, thank you for coming on. I was looking back over because the first time you was on was in November 2022, and then we did. So we talked a lot about sort of the time management and the energy management and things like that we were at the time. And then we thought, right, we need to get you back on because we started talking about habits at the end of the podcast. Then thought, right, we need to get back. So he said just over. It was the 8th of March 2023 when you was on before. So that's when the podcast was released. So, and we talked a lot about habits and daily routines and things like that. So it's great to get you back on and let's just, we'll have a chat sort of from there. So do you want, before we get into the podcast, do you want to just do a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so hi to your listeners. As I said, I'm really excited to be back on your podcast. So for those of you that haven't listened to a previous podcast or recognise the accent or anything like that, my name is Alice. I'm a life coach, but I always give that generic, like I'm a life coach, but it's, anyone that's kind of seen me on Instagram or their business or does coaching themselves, they'll know that it's so much more to that. There's so many different angles. So I do one-to-one coaching. I also run my own group programs, create content. I also do consultancy work, training for other organisations. I've now started doing a lot more writing, actually, since I last was on your podcast. So I'm actually a columnist. I can't ever say that word, columnist.
Wow.
For a newspaper out
know what
here.
you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I write columns I've just started that for a newspaper out here in Cambodia, where I'm living at the moment.
Okay.
And my book came out as well in January. So I guess now I can technically add author to the list of things that I do as well. So yeah.
Wow. And you alluded there, you're in Cambodia. You've been there a while. I don't think that was sort of planned for being there a while, from what I understand.
No. If there was a sentence that could summarize my life, it'd be like, that didn't go to plan. Like, this is not how I mapped things out. But I came here in May 2022. And I was actually on my way to Bali to do a bit more traveling and stuff like that. My parents live in a place called Kampot in Cambodia, and I kind of just haven't left yet. So I'm kind of still traveling, to and fro back to England and things like that. But I did actually reflect on that, because November 2022, I was living in Valencia for a little stint because I was enrolled into language school. And then podcast number 2, I remember distinctively doing it in my nan's hallway with this horrible bloody lime green corridor. And I was in my nan's tiny little corridor doing it there in Kent. And then I was like, oh no, this one I'm doing in Cambodia. So it's like, it's traveling with me as well. So
exactly. And that was because I can remember recording that, thinking you were in Valencia at the time, thinking, moving to like sort of, it is travels with Alice while we're sort of doing the podcast. So let's get you back on in next year, and then sort of like the first quarter of next year, and see where you are then. Who knows? So thanks for agreeing to come back on. What I wanted to do is just good timing, really, because I know you've got this podcast. We're recording it a week before, but the podcast actually goes out the morning of the 27th of March, which I know you've got your session coming out, which we'll obviously put for those people that are listening to this at 7 o'clock when this podcast comes out, or first thing in the morning when the podcast comes out on the 27th. Excuse me. I'll put the link in the show notes to then. You've got a session going on at 10 o'clock. We'll have what's all that about?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is something that I have never done before or never seen before. So I'm really excited about this. So as a business owner, I get people telling me all the time, like, oh, it's so lonely being a business owner. And in all honesty, I've never really experienced that. And I think it is because I just make sure I'm really plugged in. Like I have always joined masterminds or had an accountability buddy, or just have people that I can spitball ideas about. And I think there's such power in sharing ideas and getting feedback and market research. So I wanted to put like a masterminding event on for people, but also use it as an opportunity for like a bit of hot seat coaching, and also just connect as well. I'm all for like collaboration, not competition. So it's just kind of everything rolled into one, really. So a bit of networking, a bit of coaching, a bit of masterminding. So it's going to be a place where you can come share your idea or get feedback, or hey, I've got this goal that I'm working on. Any ideas? It's just more brains are better than one. So it's just a way to kind of bring people together for that. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. And yeah, just wanted to do something a little bit different.
No, absolutely. It's totally different, because I've done over the past, like the podcast so far this year, it's funny enough, next week's podcast that comes out is about reflecting. Of course, it's the end of quarter one for the year. So it's about reflecting. And I was reflecting on the podcast, which is shared on the podcast, or which I will share on the podcast next week. And it's about, like, the podcast has been about habits. The first 4 weeks of the year was about habits, but then the last 4 in between guest episodes that I have has been about accountability. And I talked about like self-accountability, or then having accountability partnerships, or working with a mentor. And I sort of put those 3 different options out there in terms of the self-accountability partnerships or working with a mentor, whether this is something like, I've never seen anything like this before. It is very unique in terms of building it's built like a bit accountability partnerships, but then also a bit of a mentoring and a bit of coaching going on as well. It's quite unique.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really excited. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm such a big believer in like the power of sharing ideas. And I think because I've come from a corporate background where typically it was like, oh, you've got to keep your good ideas to yourself in case somebody steals it or takes credit for it. So I definitely came from a background of competition, not collaboration. And so having my business has been like such a breath of fresh air. And I love the idea of collaboration and sharing ideas and getting feedback. And at the moment, I'm organising an event for when I go back to England in May. So I just kind of put it out there on Instagram and just was like, what do you think? What are your ideas? And I've just had so many good ideas from people that, to be honest, I would never have thought about including in my event. And it's really helped shape how I want this event to look like, because let's be honest, I've got good ideas, but I'm not like the number one genius in ideas. Like, everybody's got a good idea, do you know what I mean? So just having that feedback off Instagram was great. It's like, oh, cheers everyone. So yeah, all for collaboration.
Absolutely. I think that's having that right mindset, Alice. It is about collaboration. You just said there, you're not the number one for the idea person in the world kind of thing. It's about, and I talk about it, like, obviously from what you're doing, you are one of the unique guests that I have on the podcast that is not from mortgage services or financial services or that industry background. So I talk a lot about abundance mindset and brokers collaborating with each other. And some people are doing that now in a positive light. We see the negative ones, but we also see the positive ones, which you're talking about there, about what a great idea of getting this sort of group together, collaborating and sharing experiences and ideas. But I've talked about that from a mortgage broker point of view, because people are going through similar sort of things and similar challenges. And you have to have that abundance mindset. They're not the competition. They're not somebody there's enough business to go around kind of thing. So you've got to have that right mindset to be able to do that. And luckily you have got that mindset. Have you always been that way in terms of that sort of collaboration?
Yeah, good question. I think I probably have. I think that probably is my natural tendency, but I think it probably got beaten out of me for the 8 years that I was in corporate, because I think I was young and bright-eyed. I was like, oh, let's collaborate. And it's like, oh no, everyone's working in silos, doing their own thing and stealing each other's ideas. Okay, well, that's not how it works. But I think I've definitely, you've got a natural tendency, haven't you? And I think my natural tendency is, let's share ideas, let's collaborate, let's do things as a team, as a group. I work really well on my own. It's not that. It is just, I just think there's power in spitballing ideas with someone and just going, oh, can you run this by you? And what do you reckon to this? And we can't see what we can't see. So sometimes it's getting good ideas, but it's also getting somebody to go, well, how's that going to work if ... Or, just not to be a pessimist, but just kind of like point out some things maybe you haven't seen. And then you're like, oh, okay, right. Okay, now I can put a solution in place for that. And yeah, I think I've naturally probably been that type of person. But as I say, corporate probably beat it out of me. And now it's back. Now I've got my own business and I'm my boss.
Yeah. Well, and that's the beauty. That's being self-employed and having that freedom to be able to think, actually, it's quite you are true to yourself in terms of you are who you want to be, rather than somebody, like I said, beating out of you is a great analogy from that point of view. But suppressed is people sort of, if you've got that boss that likes their way of doing things and not adaptable to change. We've all been there. We've always worked with those people that it's this way and there's no choice, and you can't share ideas, you can't be proactive with your ideas, they can't be adaptable to change. We've all been there, but like now you've got that freedom, you are self-employed, and that's lost in you into, you've lost that corporate, the way that you are. It's great that you embrace totally. Do you feel that like, it's not a question I got down on my agenda, but do you feel as though you are that entrepreneurial, and you have got that spirit that you are traveling different countries and you've got that total freedom? And do you think your mind is sort of total freedom now in terms of who you are as an individual and where you want to go as a business person?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you first start your business, regardless of what it is, as a mortgage broker or I'm a coach, I think you always base your future expectation on what you have experienced and know. So whilst I had these ideas and these drives for having my own business, such as I wanted freedom, autonomy, creativity, to run my own hours, etc., you don't really know what it's going to be like until you experience it. So it took me quite a while, for example, despite specialising in time management, to get out of the 9-to-5 thinking and find my own rhythm and to find my own agenda. And again, even though my natural tendency probably is to be a collaborator, not a like competition type person, I had to go back to that because I got it taken away from me. So if your listeners, for example, are thinking, oh God, I can't collaborate, as a mortgage broker, I've got to, keep my trade secrets to myself or whatever, and there's not enough to go around. So you might need a shift in mindset, for example. But yeah, I think I definitely have that mindset of freedom now and opportunity, and, not feeling so restricted in what I do in my business, and having that freedom of choosing what I like to do in the business and what I don't like to do, who I want to work with, who I don't, who I do want to collaborate with, and stuff like that. It's a good feeling. It's very powerful, very empowering.
Good, definitely. I think it is, and I'm just interested I know what my thoughts and feelings are with regards to. I lost the corporate shackles 7 years ago, and it's then having that. It's great having that freedom of being self-employed, having your own business, but then there are a lot of challenges and accountability is one of them, but there are a lot of challenges that are faced with that. So it's how I see brokers that are still in that same corporate mindset because they're mortgage brokers. They're running the business the same way that they were managed and suppressed when they were been in the corporate world. They're still creating business plans that are just not for them. It's just what they think they should be doing, rather than it's not about them. It's not about their work-life balance. It's just they're filling things in what they think they should be doing because they've been told that way, and they're not losing those habits. Where these brokers that I work with, that literally the shackles were off, the celebration day of I'm now self-employed, and really embrace that and really gone with the full flexibility, really embrace the freedom, learn from they made the mistakes, learn from them as I have. I have fully embraced the freedom. I've made some amazing mistakes. I've had some amazing wins, but when I look back over the last 7 years and thinking where I was then, and I journal quite a bit, and I look back over and I started to journal when I went self-employed, just to and I look back over those journals. I've got a drawer full of 6-month journals in my drawer, and I look back and thinking, wow, it's what I've where I was then and where I am now. It's a real motivation because it puts a big smile on my face, thinking, oh my God, think about where my mind was then and where it is now, and how much I've learned by experiencing it, embracing it, reading as well. You talked then about being an author, but I never read before, a little bit, but I didn't. And so I've learned so much by reading. And like you said, I feel as though I've collaborated with those individuals of books that I've read, because with books, I've always found that there's been life-changing ones for me, but it's I'll read the book and it'll take me a little while to read it, but then there'll be little snippets that I'll take from each one. I'm going off on a total tangent, but I know what I mean by this in terms of the freedom of having the mindset, because you're not suppressing them. So you're reading books thinking, actually, I can put what I'm learning from reading this book, I can put into practice because I've got the freedom to do that. Yeah. So I went on a little bit, got passionate a little bit about books and things like freedom there. But I just think it's good that you've embraced that, because there's people that I see that don't embrace it and just have that self-employment world, but still continue in that corporate lifestyle. But then there's ones that fully embrace the freedom and really go with changing that work-life balance, like you've talked about, having the habits that you've talked about as well. One question I was going to ask you is, because obviously you've been traveling around a bit, you've been doing but you're still managing to run your business, you're still managing to do things you wanted to do. I'm guessing that's down, habits have helped massively with something like that.
Oh my God, absolutely. I would say that your habits are a cornerstone to success. I think it's Charles Duhigg that says that in his book, The Power of Habit. But your habits, I think let's take a step back. I think when we talk about habits, we think they're restrictive, because I think we associate habits almost with a bit of a negative connotation, that they're restrictive, and we assume that people that it's very black and white, very all or nothing. So if you're somebody who's got positive eating habits, then you're somebody who never eat cake, for example. Or if you're somebody who has the habit of going to the gym X amount of times a week, then you never have a slob on the sofa day. But for me, habits are more about lifestyle. Like habits for me are the behaviors and the actions that you take on the regular, and regular could be daily, weekly, monthly, but these are the behaviors and actions you take regularly in order to create the lifestyle that you want. So habits don't have to be restrictive. It's not like, I have to do the same thing every day at the same time. Like, I'm not actually a big believer in routine in that sense. So for me, for example, the way that I'm able to travel, maintain the positive habits in my life, like going to the gym, eating well, keeping up with like the personal development stuff I want to do, like reading books and learning Japanese and listening to a podcast every day, and also grow my business. I think it just boils down to habits in the sense that they're not restrictive, but I know what actions are going to bring me a return on investment. So I make sure I do them every day or every week, and I do them regardless of where I am. So, for example, I make sure that I fit in exercise, 3 to 5 times a week. I make sure I do 15,000 steps a day, 10 to 15,000 steps a day. I make sure that I do my weekly planning. These are all like really positive habits, and regardless of where I am in the world or what I'm doing, I will make sure that I plan that in. So it doesn't feel like, it just feels natural. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm at my nan's, in Gravesend, Kent, or if I'm in my mum's in Cambodia, like, I will still make sure that I fit some exercise in and do my weekly planning and blah, blah, blah. Because it's just a way of life. So habits really are just a lifestyle choice. They're just a way of life.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. And I think it's difficult sometimes, like you've adapted, your habits happen, doesn't matter on the environment, where some people fixate their habits based on their environment as well. So if you are if you're at home, habits happen. These are the things that happen. This is your routine. This is your structure. Or these things happen daily, weekly. When you're not at home or you're in a different environment, sometimes the habits can slip because you associate the habit with the environment as well. Whereas, and I love the answer to the question I asked that, because I asked that for a reason, because I work with some people that then have the habits and have the routine and the structure when they're in a certain environment, based from home or in the office or whatever the case may be. When that is then they're in a different environment, the habits can split. Whereas you're not seeing them as restrictive as the habits aren't. It's a lifestyle thing. So it's not a case of, well, this is my environment and this is my routine and my structure because I'm here in this environment. You've got thrown into different environments, but your habits still happen. So I'd love actually how you've adapted that, and to actually think they're not restrictive. I still want to do those things. And these people that I know that I work with, that like they still go on holiday and still do the same routine with their structure, and think their habits still happen. Doesn't matter where they are, because they are lifestyle habits. And it makes me feel like that's something that people do struggle with. The habits and the routine don't happen because they're in a new environment.
Yeah. So for me, it all boils down to what I call creating a life by design. And that for me is how I want to live my life all the time, not how I want to live my life at work and how I want to live my life off work and how I want to live my life on holiday. It's one life. It's like one pot, So for me, it's like, this is how I want to live every day. And I remember once actually when I was working in corporate and I said about using the hotel gym when I was on holiday, and she went, "Oh, you exercise whilst you were on holiday?" And I was like, "Yeah, because I like it. Like it's part of my life. So why would I not?" It's that kind of thing. Like, why am I only doing certain things, when I'm on holiday or when I'm not? So I try to keep the same structures that I know work for me, regardless of where I'm traveling or what I'm doing. If it's a Saturday or work day, it doesn't really matter. So, for example, I know for me to function at my best in the morning, for the rest of the day, I have to start my morning really well, because I am not a morning person. I am that person. So I have to do a little meditation, a little visualization. I have my lemon water in the morning. So I don't care if I'm at my nan's on holiday, working, chilling. I still want to do that, even if it's just 5 minutes. So I'll be that person that even if I'm on a weekend away, I will take my own lemons and knife so they can cut it up in the hotel and do it. And I will take headphones so that I don't piss the other person on. I'm listening to my meditation or whatever, because it is just the way of life. And it's like, oh, why would you want to do that if you were on holiday? Because it makes me a better person. And when I don't do it, I'm grouchy. It doesn't make good for anyone. So for me, like, how do I do it? I'd say it boils down to structure, energy management, and planning. And the reason why I say that is because I actually talk about this on my online time management course, because I am not a fan of routine. And a lot of people, especially in the time management world, or people trying to improve their time management, will assume that they need a good routine. But kind of like what you alluded to, Craig, like as soon as you get out of your routine, it all goes tits up. So it's hard. You get in a really good routine and then it's half term. And because the kids are off school, you can't do your usual whatever. Or you're in a really good routine, but then Christmas comes. Or you're in a really good routine and there's something happens at work and so you're pulled into the office earlier or you're working later. And let's be honest, there's always something in life to make a good excuse for not sticking to the routine. And it's because we're led by the environment. So then when we're out of the environment or out the normal loop of the routine, that's when it crumbles. So for me, because it's a lifestyle choice, it doesn't matter for me what time I get up, where I am in the world or whatever. There's still certain things that I'm going to do. And I would structure my day, my life, my week around those things that I want to include and those habits I want to include. And this is why planning is so important. And on a Sunday, I religiously do my Sunday planning. Horizon scan, helicopter vision, look at the week ahead, see what's coming up, and right, where am I? Gut Tetris, like where am I fitting all these bits in so that I can make sure I'm like keeping up my positive habits. And the other thing for me is I talk a lot about energy management, like I kind of touched on in a previous podcast with you. But for me, time management isn't just about managing time; it's about managing yourself and your energy. So I know that in order to kind of maintain my positive habits, sometimes there needs to be flexibility, because life isn't the same day in, day out, week in, week out. And I'm always super honest with like my audience on Instagram. And the last few months, for example, for me, maybe the last 5 months, have been weird. Like I got diagnosed with typhoid and I didn't know I had it for months.
Wow.
My mum has been in and out of the country because unfortunately her sister was losing her battle with cancer, and unfortunately she lost it a couple of weeks ago, and so now we've got a bereavement in the family. You know, on paper, they're perfect excuses to be like, well, I've had a lot on, so that's the reason why I haven't done X, Y, and Z. So, for example, like with the typhoid, I was on and off tablets for ages because they couldn't get rid of it because I had it for such a long time. And the tablets that I were on were getting stronger and stronger, longer and longer. And one set of tablets I was on, they were like, yeah, your ligaments could rip, so it's best you don't go to the gym. I was like, what? Like, my gym is like my, like, you know, happy place, like strong body, strong mind. Now, it would have been so easy to make that excuse of like, well, okay, I can't go kickboxing, can't go to the gym, so I won't do anything. And it's like, okay, well, the slots that I would normally do the gym, what can I do instead? Maybe it's just gentle yoga or Pilates. So my point here is listening to your energy. And there were some days, because of the insomnia, because of the meds, because of the side effects, because of the like potentially life-threatening disease, like there were some days that I was like exhausted. So it's like, okay, what can I do to modify? I usually do 20 minutes of Japanese study. My brain is dead today. I'm only going to do 5. I normally do a 60-minute sweat fest in the gym. Today I can only do 15 minutes yoga. Do you get what I mean? Like it's okay to modify the habit, but I think we get so caught up in the restrictiveness of a habit of it. It's got to be like this, that we forget the flexibility, and then we forget to mix it up with what our energy's got at the time. And you know, I've just gone for a really energy draining 5 months, but I've still technically maintained my habits because I've just flexed and adapted to my energy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% get what and understand what you're talking about, because is like experiencing something very similar in terms of not obviously like illness like that. But I had an accident at the people that I'm not really talked about this on with very few people. I'm not talked about on the podcast, but I had an accident at the start of the year, and it threw my whole, like, my habits were, and my routine, the structure was literally thrown out in terms of what I did in the morning. I just couldn't, like, and it's about then adapting, like you said. What reminiscent with me then was that I would run at a certain time every single day. I'd do, like, running for me is like, you go to the gym, running for me is like that mindset release. And so as soon as you're not doing those things, I wasn't running, I wasn't doing the other things I was doing, I wasn't doing the cold water therapy and things like that. I didn't feel like myself. I had to adapt. There's a certain amount of time where I couldn't even do things like that. It's just physically impossible for me to do that. But then now it's sort of, I still can't run every single day, but I can certainly walk. So it's a case of, right, well, I'm just walking instead of running. I will get back to the running. I know I will get there, but I'm back to I can't do the cold water dips at the minute, but I can do the cold water showers. So that's my sort of then, but I eventually will get back to the cold water dips. So it's because, but I enjoyed my lifestyle. Like I didn't feel like me when that button was paused and what happened with, like, where I wasn't able to do what I would enjoy doing day in, day out. I felt like my life was paused. I didn't feel like it was me. I didn't feel good about myself. I was dealing with what I was dealing with anyway, but I didn't feel good in terms of, I didn't feel like I was growing and moving forward. It was literally a pause on there thinking, but I had to then think, you know, is that, well, it is paused for a number of weeks, but I will get back to that. And then now I notice a massive difference in myself and my mindset and the way that I am and my thoughts and my working day based on the fact that I'm not back where I was, but I will get there. But I am sort of doing the things that, like you said, you're doing, rather than doing that, you were doing the yoga or doing that. It's just adapting to what but it's not beating yourself up. Like, I couldn't beat myself up and say, Craig, you need to do 10K today. Like, what are you, like, because I just physically couldn't do it. It literally, like, my mind, like, it's okay saying, well, you could have done it, Craig, because if you got the right mindset, you could have got over that. No way. I've got 5 broken ribs, 2 in 2 places, hemothorax. What people don't know, I had 2.5, 3 liters of blood drained off my lungs because one of my punctured an artery in there, and so literally I could not function in terms of doing what I was doing. I was dealing with what I was dealing with at that particular time. I'm still not out the other side. I'm still, like, in terms of what's going on, but I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I felt bad about that. But I didn't beat myself up. I was thinking to myself, Craig, you can only push yourself as far as you could push yourself. And I knew my body was telling me at certain points, you need to stop right now, because I would do certain things, and then the day after, like, the pain was pretty intense. So, like you say, you don't want to be too restrictive with your habits, because actually I could have beat myself up. I could have been really going, you need to get back, you need to be doing this, but I just couldn't. No way that I could. So it's interesting to hear your side of that, of how you dealt with that as well, which is, like you say, it's a lifestyle choice, not a habit, and this has to happen, and and don't feel good if it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a tick in a box. And also, I think you make such a good point there, because one of the things I specialise in is time management, energy management, and mindset. And the mindset might seem a little bit of a curveball, like, hang on a minute, she's talking about, tips for, like, not procrastinating and, how to be productive and mindset. But it's because the mindset bit is key. Like, everything starts with mindset. If you're going into something with the wrong mindset, then that is just going to scarper everything. And I definitely was a perfectionist. I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist, and I am my biggest critic. And so many of us are, especially in business. We're high achievers, we're driven, our business is our baby, etc. So when we can't do things in the way that we want or should, for example, you normally go running but you can't at the moment, or you normally go to the gym but you can't at the moment, what we tend to do as humans is go, well, because I can't do it in the perfect form that I normally do it, I won't do it at all. And we've got such a one-off mindset. And then what happens? Well, we feel bad, don't we? Because we didn't go to the gym today, or yesterday, or the day before that. Oh shit, we haven't moved for 2 weeks. So then what do? We beat ourselves up for it, which then just knocks our mindset and our self-belief and self-worth and all that kind of stuff in every single area. Whereas actually, if you turn it around and go, I can't go to the gym because X, Y, and Z, but I can do some yoga or go for a walk. Tick, I've technically still done the positive things and all the habits or goals that I'm working on. Now I can feel good about myself. So mindset is like such a big thing. Like we've got to get rid of that all or nothing mindset as well. Like I'm definitely talking to myself here as well because I am from that camp.
Absolutely, we've sort of gone back, taken quite a lot of time to like talk about sort of like mindset, and it's good to hear your experiences from what you've been through recently, because it wasn't part of the agenda for me to talk about this, but actually, as always, Alice, it's with you, it's sort of we start talking about one thing and then it's just sort of it then just goes on and on and on. So one thing, and you alluded to a little bit, and I wanted to make sure we sort of stay on point a little bit and pull it back in, because one thing that you do, like I talked about, you alluded a little bit before about the event that you're doing in May back in the UK, and do you want to just explain a bit about that and what that's all about and what's going on with that, because it is relevant to what we've been talking about in the podcast today and about the podcast over the past few weeks?
Yeah, oh my God, absolutely. So for me, this event is what I preach. It's about creating your life by design. And I think sometimes we know how we want life to look, but we don't give ourselves the permission, or we don't know how to do it. And I want this event to be really practical. I want it to be really inclusive, really hands-on. I want it to be like really immersive, because so many times you go to an event, you hear a motivational speaker, you feel all riled up and like, yeah, and then you leave the event and then you're like, just like a deflated balloon. Like,
absolutely, yeah. Everybody's been there. Everybody's been there.
Yeah, or in 6 months' time, you haven't actually done any of the things that you like learn on the event. So I was like, right, how do we make this different? So yeah, that's why I want to make it practical and immersive, and a small intimate event where we can like learn from one of our other. Like I said, it's collaboration, not competition. Whilst you might, and when I talk about collaboration, I don't necessarily mean like, hey Craig, let's collaborate and we're gonna like do this project together. Collaboration could just be, hey, what's your idea? Let me help you brainstorm it. This is my idea. Please help me brainstorm it. That collaboration is simple as that. So I want the event to kind of touch on that. I want it to be a safe space for people to share ideas and level up and create their life by design and collaborate with one another and share input, mastermind, all those kind of things. And I also really want to give people like the skills and the theory so that they can then go out and create that life by design. So through their time management and their energy management and the right habits and their mindset and stuff like that, because these are the fundamentals to creating what you want. Like these are the fundamentals that you need to grasp to create your life by design.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think I said before when you said about people, we've all experienced that place where we've been to some event, we've made loads of notes, we then come back into the day-to-day routine, and then we don't change anything, we don't adapt, we don't put anything into practice. We've got great ideas, but we don't take the time to do that. We've all been there. And I think I was like thinking about this quite a while ago. I think when you go to those events, the reason why I've been to events where I've not made loads of notes necessarily about what's been going on at the event. I've obviously learned certain things, but then also just it's been time away from the business, so the event might have not been good for me in terms of I've got anything out of it. However, I'm away from my normal place of work. I'm away from and I've just made loads of notes because I'm not sat in front of my desk. I've got the freedom in my mind to let's just open up. Let's think about what we wanted to achieve. Let's reflect on what we're doing and where we're going. So that we will have all been in those sort of things. But with this, like what you're talking about, again, with the collaboration side of things, it's just we all have ideas and all have thoughts, and it's just but then the way that those things grow is talking them through with the right individuals, because you might talk them through to the individual that maybe not the right person to talk them through with them or share an idea with, and they've not got the same mindset of you, but you talk that through with that individual, and then they also all of a sudden bring you down. It's not going to work. Have all the negativity that you sort of. We've all been in that place, and then thought, you know what, this is a great idea, but I'm going to give up the ghost on what I wanted to achieve now, and I'll go back to doing what I'm doing, or give up on that. Whereas these sorts of, like the sessions you're talking about and the session you're hosting, because you've got like-minded people in there, it's and that's the goal, isn't it? That because you've got like-minded people who have got, then you're more likely to have impact, take action, and develop and sharing that goal and idea with the people that are wanting to share their ideas as well. So it's a very positive environment to be in.
Yeah. And let's be honest, sometimes it can be the closest people to us and our loved ones that are obviously trying to protect us, but they're the negative Nancy's. So it's important, I think, to surround yourself with those people that are cheerleading you, but some who, you know, as I said, I've got some great ideas of people on Instagram. And one lady said, I love personal development events because it just gives me an excuse to get away from the laptop, even if it's the same city, but just get away from the laptop and recharge and refresh my brain and energy and my batteries. And I was like, oh my God, that's so true, isn't it? Because we just do the same shit day in, day out, even if we love what we do. And I love what I do, but it can be a bit samey. And if you want to create new neural pathways and new ways of thinking, you've got to have new experiences and put yourself out there.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's sort of, the loved ones aren't necessarily the right people sometimes. And that's nothing against the loved ones. Like I said, they're there to protect you. They maybe not thinking that they are doing the right thing for you when actually it's not. They should, but that's nothing against those individuals. You've just chosen the wrong person to share your idea with, because it's like you need to be sharing it with like-minded individuals that will then will still give you the feedback. They will still be giving that constructive criticism and bring you back to reality. However, it will be in a positive sort of environment to then help you think, actually, you might need to tweak that, or you might need to look at doing that, or this is what I would think of it. And that's where this sort of environment thrives for people, from that sort of on the spot instant feedback that you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, even this is such a silly example, but the other day I walked back home, and okay, admittedly it's Cambodia, it's bloody hot all the time. So I arrived and I was sweating, but you know, it's because it's like 35 degrees here. So anyway, so I got home and my mum was like, oh, did you walk back? You're like, yeah, because as I said, you know, one of my habits is getting my steps in and movement. And she went, oh, walking's not good for you. It's bad for your knees. Number one, where on earth did you get that freaking information? And I was like, what? And my mum's actually quite health conscious. Like, she's pushing 70, but she can bloody do a downward dog and a headstand in yoga. She's really flexible and she does not look her age. But anyway, you know, just like, where did you get that information? And number one, why are you poo-pooing on the fact that I walked for half an hour? It was so weird. And she didn't mean it. She went, I'm just concerned. I saw something on YouTube the other day that walking's bad for your knees. I mean, I do kickboxing, like lift heavy in the gym. Like, I think I can walk for 10 minutes. But my point to this is, like, I love her. She loves me. But there's obviously something inherent built into, like, protecting the loved ones. So then we kind of protect them from everything, like walking. So, you know, I know that's a really silly example, but it is. We've got to remember that our loved ones are like that. They're the ones that go, oh, walking, not good for you, back of your knees. And so then if you're like then trying to share like this exciting goal of like, oh my God, I've got this great idea. And they're like, you sure? That instantly is going to make you go, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. And then that's it. You're back in your limited thinking box. Back to your like static mindset.
Yeah. And that is the thing with it. Like you say, you trust the loved ones, but they're not always the best, maybe not always the best people to sort of get you. And like you said, that's not, I think if you listen to anything or see anything, it's a case of that's bad for you, that's good for you. You'll always have difference of opinions with everything in life.
Yeah.
I think you've just got to take people's thoughts on board. If you are going to ask for people's opinions, you've got to be prepared to take that feedback on. Because there's people that will sort of say, "Oh yeah, welcome feedback. Yeah, I want your thoughts. I want your take on it." But then give them the idea. And as soon as they're not supportive or on the same channel, the person that's given the idea and looking to receive feedback, the shutters go down and they don't want the feedback because it's not what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Which sometimes you've got to accept that's going to be the case from people that are particularly loved ones, but people as well that are in certain, like whom you maybe, it's just, they're going to be harsh with you, the people that know you very well and close to you, whereas the people that are in groups and things will give you that feedback, but it will be constructive and be positive. So then you can sort of build on that. And like I said, if you are actually going out into groups and asking for feedback, you've got to be prepared to take that on board, because some people aren't prepared. They'll ask for feedback, but not prepared to take that constructive criticism on board. And I've seen that firsthand with people that I've worked with in the past.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning of this podcast about collaboration, not competition, and also like the mindset of like abundance and freedom. Because if you're not in that place where you feel like the other person's coming from a place of collaboration, but you feel like they're coming at you rather than hey, that's a great idea, but have you thought of X, Y, and Z? You're instantly going to put your back up and your shutters down, aren't you? So I think it goes back to that mindset and perception of like collaboration and stuff like that.
Definitely. Alice, we've gone on again for sort of like 40 minutes and just talked, and I'm not even looked at the time. I've looked across there at the little thing that says 43 minutes and 32 seconds into the recording. So is there anything that you've not talked about you want to talk about, or anything we've missed that you want to talk about? Maybe we get you back on after the event and we can sort of talk about how that's gone and things like that. Is there anything else we've missed off?
Just to like leave your listeners with this, because we talked a lot about like habits and life by design and creating your lifestyle. If anyone's listening to that and going, yeah, but how? It's all very well listening to a podcast and resonating what the speaker is saying and going, oh yeah, like life by design, yeah, gonna be flexible with my habits and all that kind of stuff. But it's the next step, isn't it? Of like, how on earth do I do it? For me, it always, when I work with myself, work with my clients, it always boils down to what your values are, because everyone is so different. So you can't copy someone's life by design. You can't say, well, I think Jodie's got it sus, so I'm just going to copy what she does, because her values might be really different to yours. So creating a life by design and the habits and the mindset and all that kind of juicy stuff that we've talked about today, just really get curious about what you value and where you place your value. And for me, it's things like traveling, personal development, having adventure, helping others. So that's how I know I'm creating my lifestyle that I want and I'm doing the right habits, because it ticks those boxes for me. But if you're not someone who values travel and adventure, for example, and then you're not going to make time for the same stuff as I do, you're not going to make time for the habits on the same stuff that I do. So there's no right or wrong. No one's better than the other. There's no one habit is better than the other kind of thing. It's got to be down to you. And if you're stuck, I'd say get curious and knowing what your values are and where you want to spend your time and stuff like that as to get you going.
Absolutely. No, 100% agree with you, and a great way to end the podcast. So Alice, thank you very much for spending some time away from the 35-degree heat outside in Cambodia right now for you. And so thank you very much for sort of being part of the podcast again for the third time coming on. And I'll make sure that you've got an event that's happening at 10 o'clock on the 27th. So I'll make sure that's UK time. So make sure that's in there so people can register for that event. If people are listening to the podcast now thinking, I want to sort of spend an hour, like, is it 10 to 11? Is that the time?
It's an hour and a half, actually, yeah.
So an hour and a half. If not, if they're listening to after, then obviously I'll tag you into the post. You've got your event in May, which we'll make sure that there's links in that as well. And just reach out to you and thinking in terms of, I like what Alice is saying, I want to work with Alice, or I want to get more, just instigate a conversation with Alice, then we'll make sure you're tagged in as always, like we were before, with all your links to your socials and your website and everything else as well. But just thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing, thank you for being honest and trusting me again with no agenda and just chatting for the last 45 minutes or so.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, as you said, anything that's resonated with listeners today, I am an open book. I love chatting to people. So I'm a people person. So come find me on social media and say hi. And yeah, we're just more than happy to answer any questions or anything like that. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. Loved it as always.
Good. I'm good. I have it too. So I'm glad you've enjoyed it, because I have it too. Thanks, Alice. Thank you. Thanks for that, Alice. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast and coming back on. It was great to have you back on the podcast and hear your experiences, hear your thoughts about habits and accountability. And yeah, if you've not registered for the event and you're listening to this before the 10 o'clock on the 27th, register for that, or you can obviously catch up with her. She's tagged in. She's got another event coming up in May and various other things as well. So connect with her and link with her as well. I think the good thing is, the point that she made right at the end of the podcast there, which is something that I've always talked about, is about running your own race. She used different words, but it's all about you, your accountability. This is your race. These are your goals, your aspirations. This is your life. And so I think it was just a real good thing to end on. So if you've got any comments, thoughts, feedback, as always, leave them in whatever platform you listen to or watch these podcasts on. And as I always end it on, even more so now, as Alice ended the podcast on her section on that, it's very important that you are running your own race.